Good morning guys, welcome back. Matt Osborne here. In today's video I'm going to answer the question, is the Lumix S5 good for photography, but from a Leica photographer's standpoint? So I guess firstly, if you're new to the channel, welcome, and secondly, I normally shoot with digital Leica cameras. In the past, the Leica M8, the Leica M9, and currently Leica M240 and Leica CL crop sensor camera. And so with that background, I bought the Lumix S5, and I'm going to answer some of the maybe questions or concerns which you may have if you are also a Leica photographer sitting on the fence wondering if a Lumix can kind of tick your boxes at the lower price point compared to Leica cameras. So I made a list of my concerns before making the purchase, and then I'll go through each one in turn and answer them in terms of are they actually a problem or not. If you missed my last video, I should probably recap. I just bought a Panasonic Lumix S5 digital camera. This is a 24 megapixel full frame mirrorless camera. I can't show you because I'm using it currently to record moments, but I'll bring up some images or footage to show you what the camera looks like. So coming from Leica's, maybe the first concern I might have is the camera well built? Obviously, if you use Leica cameras, we're used to extremely well made cameras, whether it's Leica film cameras or Leica digital cameras. And although the Lumix S5 feels a bit more plastic, it is actually a magnesium alloy body, similar to something like a Nikon F5. That's also magnesium alloy, as far as I understand. And so, although on the outside some bits feel a bit plasticky, overall it feels really solid, and I'm not concerned at all about the fragility of the camera. The benefit of the camera design, it is also splash proof and dust proof, whereas if I'm using my Leica M240, I'm a bit more careful in the rain. So the Lumix S5 is probably better suited to our ever-changing British weather conditions. If you followed this channel for a long time, you'll know that I really enjoy small compact cameras. And so when I was looking at Leica SL cameras and some of the other Panasonic S cameras, one of my biggest concerns was the size. I enjoy small cameras because when I'm doing my overseas photo shoots, it's much easier to carry multiple camera bodies and multiple lenses in kind of a carry-on luggage than if I've got some massive heavy camera that takes up all my hand luggage capacity as one camera. So I really do appreciate small, lightweight cameras. And the good news is about the Panasonic Lumix S5, it is the smallest, lightest Panasonic S camera, weighing in around 714 grams, including battery. And that also makes it lighter than the Leica SL, Leica SL2, and the more recent Leica SL2S. I have tested a Leica SL2S, so I do a Leica versus Lumix kind of head-to-head video when I get a chance. So although the S5 is smaller and lighter than the other S cameras, S1, S1R, S1H, it shares a lot of similar features. The S5 is a very capable video camera. That's probably not something I'll cover on this channel, but it is a great video camera for those interested in video. Maybe check out some other reviews that talk about the video aspect. It offers dual card slots, which is useful in a professional body if you're doing something like wedding photography and you want to record to two cards to give you a backup, and also offers you image stabilization. I'll come on to that a bit more in a second. For those of you that don't know, the S5 is an L-mount camera, sometimes referred to as like L-mount, or also known as the L-mount Alliance. The great benefit of the L-mount is you can use like SL lenses, which are obviously super high performing autofocus lenses, but then you can also get cheaper options from people like Sigma and Panasonic. So I bought the camera with the 20 to 60 zoom lens, which is basically just a variable aperture kit lens, f3.5 to 5.6. But it can actually take quite nice pictures. I'm not going to dwell on this because I'm sure you're not interested in Panasonic kit lenses on this channel, but I'll just bring up a couple of photos just to show you that kit lenses can actually be quite good. And for me, the autofocus kit lens is really important because I'm going to use it for recording all of the YouTube videos. Because the S5 is L mount, you then need adapters to be able to use Leica M mount lenses and Leica R lenses. So I use either the Leica M to Leica L adapter for M lenses, or the 7 Artisans close focus adapter, which I think is actually even better because it means I can now focus closer than either 0.7 meters or 1 meter with all of my M lenses. So that's been really useful. For using R lenses, you could either get a Leica L to R adapter, which is probably what most people would go for. But because I wanted the option to maybe use Leica R lenses on Leica M bodies using the Hot Shoot EVF, I'm using a Novaflex Leica R to Leica M adapter, and then the 7 Artisans Leica M to L close focus adapter. The second benefit of using this approach that I've kind of gone for is because I'm using the close focus helicoid with the R adapter, I can now focus closer with all my R lenses. If I was using a standard L to R adapter, you're limited to the close focus distance of your R lens. This is normally only a problem when you're using telephoto lenses, because some of the longer Leica R lenses, you can't get quite as close to your subject as you'd like to. And talking of Leica R lenses, I have a new addition to the Leica family, and that is this Leica 80-200 Elmar R ROM lens, which is a fixed aperture zoom lens. And I've been absolutely blown away by how much fun this lens is. Normally when I think Leica photography, I think 50mm and wider normally. Occasionally I'd shoot 90 and very occasionally I might shoot 135, but extremely rarely. Now I've got the EVF of the S5. It really suits longer lenses, especially the Leica 90mm f2, which I showed you in the last video. I can just bring up a couple of examples if you didn't see that video. Really great choice. Fast lens and telephoto make it really perfect for this camera. And then secondly, the lens I just bought, the 80-200 f4. Really great lens on this camera. Here are a couple of examples using the 80-200 R lens. And then I also bought a Leica 135mm f2.8 R lens. And here are a few samples using that lens. And I can't really tell the difference between this sensor and a Leica sensor. To me, the photos look like Leica photos, which I'm really happy with. And talking of the Leica look, one of the biggest concerns I had before buying the camera is, would I like the look of the final photos or the look of the sensor? And I can honestly say, hand on heart, if you showed me one of my Lumix S5 photos next to a Leica M240 photo or a Leica SL photo, shot with the same lens and with my same preset applied to both photos, I couldn't tell the difference. So another massive tick in the box for the Lumix, because I can make Leica photos without a Leica at a much lower price point if I still use interesting lenses. I think that's the key. But that said, I shot some photos with the kit lens and I still got, I like to think, quite nice photos. So is the Leica look a thing? It's always a big debate, isn't it? Another concern that you sometimes hear when you hear about Leica versus Panasonic or Leica versus Sony, they say the colours of the Panasonic are not as good as the Leica. Here are a series of colour images shot with the Lumix S5, and I can't really see any difference between these colours and colours shot with my other cameras. To me, they look true to life as I remember the scene looking when taking the picture. So absolutely no complaints when coming to the colours of the Panasonic. Another big one, if you are like me and you're looking at all the kind of spec charts and you're comparing Leica SL, Leica SL2, Leica SL2S versus, in this instance, the Panasonic S5. One of the biggest kind of statistics that may jump out at you is the electronic viewfinder resolution of the S5 is half that of the Leica SL2S and also half that of the older Lumix S1 and Lumix S1R. So the SL2S, the S1 and the S1R all have 5.77 million dot electronic viewfinder resolution, which at the time that those cameras were released was pretty much the best of the best, or one of the best in terms of the kind of big, bright, clear viewfinder. If you shoot manual lenses, it makes sense to get the best possible viewfinder. I shoot manual lenses, so that was a concern going down the route of a lower resolution viewfinder and lower magnification. This viewfinder is 0.74 magnification, and some of the others like the SL2S I believe are 0.78. In real life, do I see a difference when looking through the SL2S and looking through the S5? You can definitely see like a finer resolve photo in the SL2S viewfinder, which would be the same in the S1 and the S1R because they've all got the same resolution viewfinder. But the reason that I worried less about this viewfinder is this has the same resolution viewfinder as my beloved Leica CL crop sensor camera. That EVF is amazing, and so I wasn't too worried to get the same resolution as the Leica CL. In reality, can I tell a difference? I think the Leica CL viewfinder is better. I won't kind of try and oversell the Panasonic to you. I think the manual focus experience of the Leica CL, if you use the Leica branded L to M adapter, which is quite pricey, That allows you to do the two-step zoom. I'll bring up the thumbnail to a video and you can check it out if you want to see what I'm talking about. But on the Leica CL, if you use the Leica adapter, it's a two-step zoom on the top dial. You zoom in twice, see really clearly, focus, recompose, take your shot. Option 1. Option 2, you could use a third-party adapter, such as NovaFlex or 7 Artisans that I use. That means you need to use the up arrow, which is slightly slower, but it does the same job. And then the Panasonic Lumix S5. You press a button on the back, that zooms in. So it's one press, you zoom in, you adjust your focus, take your shot. So it's really not bad at all and very usable. And if, like me, you currently use a Leica M240 with the hot shoe EVF, it's like a million times better than the M240. You cannot compare. I was so used to the low resolution EVF of the M240. That was kind of my normal if I wanted full frame and say a non-rangefinder coupled lens photo. And so because it's the normal to me, it was fine. I could take all my shots and no problem whatsoever, other than it being really slow in between each picture. That is a problem. But then if you compare that to the Lumix, you'll be so happy. Wait till the end and I'll tell you how much this camera costs, and then it gets quite interesting. Now hopefully fellow Leica shooters watching this video can appreciate my standpoint on this, and hopefully if you're new to the channel and you shoot with Sony, Panasonic, Fuji, anything else, please don't hate me. So I'm used to using vintage cameras or the Leica M240, which is a optical viewfinder rangefinder camera, or the Leica CL, which I also use as a standard kind of viewfinder camera. So basically every camera I use, I hold to my face. That is how I take pictures. That is how I've always taken pictures 99% of the time. Occasionally I might have done some trying to shoot low down with the LCD, for example, but that was normally a one-off for me. So one great feature of the Lumix S5, it has a flip-out screen. I only really considered it for making my YouTube videos because I need to see myself to make the video. So that was the only real thought that kind of went into having a flip screen. It's like, use it for video, tick. And then for all photography, I just thought I'd use it attached to my face like I would with all my other cameras. But when the new camera actually arrived and I started playing around with it, I found it's actually quite cool to shoot from the screen. And the strange thing is now I feel really guilty because when I saw, say, other YouTube videos and a professional photographer was kind of shooting at arm's length using the LCD, I always kind of thought that's not proper photography. They've got it on auto everything and they're just going like you would on an iPhone. And that's fine. That's how they take photos and nothing against that. But I thought, oh no, it's much better to do it properly when it's attached to your face. But what I'm actually finding is the flip-out screen is so useful for getting kind of new creative angles. So I was using, for example, the 80-200 and I was skimming it across the floor really low, and there's no way I could have had my head on the road. But I had the LCD kind of almost flat just in the road and had the camera maybe this high off the road, shooting along the road length or along a path. And it just gives you so many more creative options in terms of the angles. And then the second benefit I found when using wide-angle M lenses, if you're on the street, it's quite nice if you want to try a bit more kind of discreet street photography, because you can have the camera kind of at your waist height with the screen pointing up and you can kind of shoot from the hip but see what you're doing. So I was kind of playing around a little bit with that when I was in London and I was like, oh yeah, that's actually quite good fun. So I guess what I'm saying is I'm no longer anti-flip screen, and they are actually really beneficial. I think mostly for things like creativity where you want to get a really low angle shot on, say, a wide lens. I'm still critically focusing manually and shooting it all in manual, but it just gives me more options. It's a bit like combining iPhone photography with kind of real camera photography with vintage cameras. It's kind of the best of both worlds coming together, which is quite exciting. In terms of the Lumix battery life, I found one battery just about lasted for a full day's shoot, and that was around 450 photos. I've got a spare battery, so I'm covered, but 400 plus photos for one battery is pretty respectable. Two more great features which I hadn't appreciated that I would enjoy as much as I enjoy is the high ISO capabilities of the S5. My Leica M240 tops out at around ISO 1600 because it gets really bad kind of banding at ISO 3200. And yet yesterday I was using the Lumix S5 at ISO 6400 and it looked perfect. It didn't even look like a high ISO photo. So the ability to shoot high ISO and still get clean shots is extremely useful, especially for me for, say, wedding photography when I'm not able to use lights in all situations. Another real benefit I didn't really appreciate in advance was image stabilization. I'm used to cameras without image stabilization, so I'm used to kind of having to stay still when taking my shots. I normally tend to shoot a 60th of a second as kind of a rough guide, but obviously with a rangefinder camera you can go slower than that. But when using longer lenses with the S5, i.e. my 80-200, it's an f4 lens and a long lens, so the high ISO and image stabilization kind of combined still gives me sharp, well exposed photos in low lighting. So that's kind of a glowing report to the Panasonic Lumix S5. But is it all amazing? Is there anything bad about this camera? I'd say there are 3 negatives about this camera, and one is a massive one. So in reverse order, the first con about this camera is it has more buttons than I probably need. Coming from Leica cameras, we are kind of very fortunate that the Leica designers put some thought into the amount of buttons that you need for a camera. You don't need 50,000 extra function buttons, you just need the basic buttons. And I think the Leica designers absolutely nail it when it comes to buttons and menus and things like that. So complaint number 1, far too many buttons. But what I found is you just learn to use the ones that you need and you just ignore all the others. I do appreciate, because the camera shoots video as well, you do need more buttons, but there do seem quite a lot of buttons. So now I just use the main buttons that I need and I forget the rest of the buttons. And that brings me on to menus. Panasonic like to have menus on menus on menus on menus. As I understand it, they are kind of nowhere near as bad as Sony's. People have come to workshops with their nice cameras. They can't even find the functions on their cameras because they are that complicated. I've even seen some camera reviews by one of the really popular kind of really highly regarded camera review people, and they kind of left this clip into their video on purpose just to show you how bad the Sony menus were, and they couldn't work out their own camera on the actual video, which made me smile. So it's not just Panasonic doing complicated menus. I believe Sony are worse. I'm not sure what Fuji are like. Leica are far better than all of those, not because I'm biased, because I'm a Leica boy. Leica have really simple, really minimal menus, and I prefer that. So if you like minimal menus, maybe do what I tried to do, set the camera up once, and so it does what you need it to do, and then forget the menus and just use the camera as it is. There are buttons on the top, so you don't really need to dig into the menus kind of on a day-to-day basis. So I think that's one good thing, and once the camera's set up, you shouldn't need to worry about it. Okay, onto the massive problem about this camera. The biggest problem with this camera, by far, is the fact that it doesn't say Leica on the front. And I'm being absolutely genuinely serious about this. Not because I'm a proud Leica boy, partly because I'm a proud Leica boy. I enjoy using Leica cameras, and if you're, say, a car person, you might enjoy driving, I don't know, a BMW or something. And if you've got 2 really nice BMWs on your drive and everyone walks past and thinks, oh, that's a nice house with nice cars on the drive, and you've worked hard and you've bought your cars that you enjoy, and then one day you might sell your BMWs and get some kind of battered old Ford Fiesta or whatever some cheap car is. I'm not really a car person. People then think of you differently because of the badge on your camera. And I know it shouldn't be like this, and I know everybody that's watching this that doesn't shoot with Leica probably thinks Leica photographers are a complete beep, 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 beep anyway, and I fully understand that. But equally, if you're in the Leica camp that I am, it's almost kind of a nice little family. You're kind of proud to shoot Leica. I enjoy tagging my photos Leica. I enjoy posting my photos to Leica groups on Facebook. I enjoy talking to fellow photographers that also use Leicas. And the biggest problem I've got is, honestly, because this camera is not a Leica, I can't post into the Leica groups anymore unless I take photos with Leica lenses, which I feel I'm going to have to do now, because if I don't use a Leica lens or a Leica camera, then Mr. Leica is now not using any Leica at all. And I know it's kind of just a silly name anyway, which I set up for the blog years ago, but because I kind of branded myself on a particular camera brand, it does kind of now limit me to wanting to enjoy other camera brands, even if they're really good, as the S5 is here. So I've tried to kind of think about this, and the thought process I had is some people buy Leica cameras and then they tape up the red dot to make it anonymous, and they're not buying a camera because of the logo. They're buying the camera because it's a really useful tool, it's really well made, and it's exactly what they want for their job. If I tape up the Lumix, again, I'm not proud of this camera and I'm not showing it off. I don't show off any of my Leica cameras. I would buy them because they're functional. I bought the M240 because I enjoy using rangefinder cameras because I'm short-sighted. The Leica CL came along that had an electric viewfinder, which meant I could see. So again, tick box, I could still see. So I was happy to buy that camera. And then because the Lumix is also mirrorless, I can still see. So this camera works for me as well. But it doesn't have the red dot and it's not a Leica. So I think I'll probably just end up using this camera with Leica lenses as much as possible to still make me feel like a shooter when using this camera. Obviously, I've still got my other Leica cameras, so I'm not kind of forgetting those. And then I probably will tape up the Lumix badge so that when I'm shooting with Leica cameras, so it just looks like an anonymous camera rather than a particular brand. Obviously, one huge benefit of the Lumix is you obviously have a lot less stress when you're carrying a cheaper camera compared to an expensive Leica. And obviously the red dot can also attract the wrong attention as well as potentially good attention if you like to kind of flash your Leica, if you're kind of that type of person. So the branding on this camera for me personally is the worst thing about this camera. You may have seen in previous videos I have used a Leica SL, I have used a Leica SL2, and I have recently tested, as mentioned, the SL2S. All three of those cameras have the Leica menus and the Leica buttons, which are really good, but they're also bigger, heavier, and more expensive. So for me, currently, at the time of making this video, I'm actually happy with my little Lumix camera alongside my Leica cameras. And when I take photos either with Leica glass, Voigtlander glass, or any other nice lens, I really cannot tell the difference between a Leica photo and a Lumix photo. And so the question you may have at this point in the video, how much does a Lumix S5 camera cost? Just to give you some kind of benchmark, the new Leica SL2S costs £4,000, which is around $5,000. A used Leica SL costs around £1,900, probably around $2,000. And a brand new Lumix S5 with 20 to 60 kit lens costs around £1,900. But if you read the small print, it doesn't cost £1,900. I'll try and put a link in the video below because if you live in the UK, there are a lot of cashback offers at the moment. So cost £1,900. Well, it's kind of 1899. It will probably show as 1899 with lens. If you read the small print, it will then say £300 cashback. So now that means it's going to cost you £1,600. And then at the time of making this video, you may also see £200 trade-in bonus, which means if you trade in one of your old cameras, you get an extra £200 off your new camera. So I traded in my GH5 and got an extra £200 off the S5. So now it's gone down from 1,900 to 1,600 to 1,400. Wait, there's more. If you're a regular viewer and a Leica M shooter like me, you may not want to consider the kit lens, which is totally fine. You could sell your new kit lens that comes with the camera on eBay, £300. That means the camera body has just cost you £1,100 brand new. And then to top it all off, if you then traded in an old camera such as the GH5, as I did, which I got over £600 back, that means the total cost of this camera brand new, body only, if I was going to sell the lens, £500. You really cannot say no to a brand new full frame mirrorless camera that I can use all my Leica Voigtlander vintage lenses with when it only costs £500. Now the counter argument is Leica cameras cost more and they depreciate much slower, meaning they're going to hold the value for a lot longer. But the problem with that argument in this situation is even a used Leica SL camera is going to cost you roughly 2 times more than a body only Lumix S5 once you kind of take off all the possible deductions that I just mentioned. And the Lumix S5 has a lot of extra features that the SL doesn't have. Is the Leica SL a bad camera? Absolutely not. I'd be more than happy to use a Leica SL personally. I've done some initial testing, but I want to kind of do a bit more of a deep dive is how do Leica M lenses perform on a Lumix S5? If you've done any reading on this topic, you'll know that if you use M lenses on most mirrorless cameras, which are not Leica, you get kind of corner softness and maybe heavier vignetting in the corners. This is true whether you shoot Fuji full frame, Sony full frame, Panasonic full frame. Have I found that a problem? Well, firstly, I'm a portrait photographer, 99%, so the only thing that really matters to me is the center of the image. So if the corners drop off and go to a nice kind of out of focus area, that's actually a benefit because that focuses your eyes more on the center of the image, which is normally a face in my situation. But equally, I use the Voigtlander Coloscope or 21mm f4 lens on the S5. Here are a few example photos. Pay particular attention to the edges of the frame. I don't think they're that bad at all. And here are some photos shot with the 35mm Coloscope R f2.5 lens. I believe the lens was stopped down to probably around 5.6 f8 for these photos, but I've not really noticed a huge drop off in corner resolution with the lenses slightly stopped down, even at 21mm, which was a pleasant surprise. I expected much worse results with wide lenses. So I had planned to just use the S5 with longer lenses, but I'll do a whole separate video on M lenses on the Lumix when I've had time to kind of play around with it a bit more. So feel free to subscribe if you want to see the results of that. That's all I've got for you today. Again, this is supposed to be a quick video and it probably isn't now. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the like button. If you're a Leica photographer, you can hopefully appreciate what this cheaper body brings for me in terms of benefits, and maybe it could suit you. Maybe you're pure Leica, and that's totally fine as well. Let me know in the comments if you're a Leica photographer that also uses Panasonic Lumix cameras, or if you're a Panasonic Lumix user tempted to go down the Leica route. So hopefully we can get a mix of people coming at it from two different angles. Lastly, as always, a big thanks to my patrons, and see you back here in the next video. Bye.